I have an interesting relationship with Vism sweatshirts. For one, I enjoy the fact that I can just wash them and wear them and not have to worry too much about the total care of each piece. But when it comes to the price point, it becomes a little bit ridiculous paying, 600, 700, sometimes over $1,000 for a sweatshirt. In this video, I really wanted to showcase some of the differences between the Visvim Amplus sweatshirt and the Visvim Jumbo sweatshirt. Now, the Jumbo sweatshirt is the oversized version or their oversized take on a traditional sweatshirt that they've been producing for the last few years. The Amplus is a relatively newer cut, however, they've been reducing the amount of releases that include that fit, and that could be for a few different reasons. Currently, I'm wearing the Amplus shortbody sweatshirt, and this one was released in, I want to say, 2023. This is in the blue colorway. I also had the white version and the red one. I believe I recently sold the green one, and so that one's no longer in my rotation, but the fit is pretty consistent across all three. I think showing this Amplus on body really demonstrates the difference between the fit of the Jumbo and the Amplus cuts. Looking at each piece side by side, you can definitely tell that the Amplus is more of a cropped and wide fit. Like, I definitely have a lot more room in the chest, and to me personally, this style and this fit is a little bit more trendy than the Jumbo. While the Jumbo could also be considered a relatively trendy fit because of the oversized aesthetic of it, I think that it really is more of like a slightly oversized fit for most people. When I'm wearing a sweatshirt, I don't want to feel constrained. Like, I want to feel comfortable. And so I think that for me personally and my body type, the Amplus is my preferred route. However, when it comes to the Jumbo and Amplus t-shirts, I don't feel like the fit is that apparent. Like, yeah, the Amplus feels a little bit shorter, but overall, I think that because of the different like techniques that are used on the shirts, whether it's, different dyes and things like that, I think throughout the wash process and garment dyeing process, maybe the type of cotton that they use for their t-shirts shrinks or like just adjust in a different way than their sweatshirts. And so I think that the sizing and the fits can be relatively inconsistent amongst Vism t-shirts. But for the most part, like I already said, I own maybe 3 or 4 of these Amplas crew necks, and they all fit basically the same. And with the Jumbo hoodies, I only have one Jumbo like regular sweatshirt, and it's that purple one. As a matter of fact, I believe I brought a few extra sweatshirts, so let me go get them. So switching to the Vism Amplas short body hoodie, to me this fits very much like the crew neck that I just had on. Obviously, the addition of the hood. One thing that I really enjoy about Vism sweatshirts though is that the hoods are like massive. And for those of you that know me personally, you know that my head is large and it's probably apparent through the screen. So the fact that it covers it with absolutely no issues, I think, is a very underrated detail for a bunch of different people. So again, even with the hoodie version of the Amplus cuts, you still have this very wide silhouette in the body, and it's definitely a lot more cropped than the Jumbo sweatshirt versions that the brand offers. I don't necessarily think it's worth it at MSRP, but if you're able to pick up some of these different items on sale, I think that you're definitely going to have an item that lasts a lifetime that you'll be able to get a lot of use out of, and just something that you can just throw on and like do anything with. So my latest pickup from fall winter 2025 is this FIL exclusive jumbo short body crew neck in the blue colorway. So this crew neck did release alongside a black variant as well as an olive variant. However, I tend to find that the crash iterations of Visvim sweatshirts tend to look the best in the blue colorways. So throughout the years, there's been several different versions or interpretations of what this sweatshirt, will be released as. This happened to be my first time pulling the trigger and actually going for it, because I think that the crash versions of Vism sweatshirts are released every so often, and while I've always enjoyed how they look, I always felt like they were a bit overpriced. But this time I kind of just like went for it and decided, like, you know what, I'll just be picking it up this season. I know that it's an item I'm definitely going to be wearing a lot. So I decided to place an order for it at the trunk show last year. And thankfully that ended up working out a bit, because at the time I believe the order or the MSRP price for this sweatshirt was $830. At the time of release, I believe it hit around around 920, and this is due to like ongoing like tariffs and things like that. But brands like Visvim and brands that heavily import a lot of different goods are seeing a pretty dramatic increase in pricing, kind of like across the board. So focusing a bit more on the current topic of the video, this is the jumbo cut of the sweatshirts that Visvim produces. And for the most part, Visvim is known for producing the jumbo, the Amplus, and the court hoodie. There's also like other variants like the JV hoodie and things like that, and some of the naming conventions that are added on. For example, like the SB stands for shorter body. So up until recently, the jumbo cut is primarily the model that Vism has been releasing for some of their different sweatshirt options. I personally prefer the overall fit of the Amplas, and while the measurements online might showcase that they're very similar, both between the jumbo and the Amplas, really the Amplas is a much like shorter, cropped version of Vism sweatshirts, while the jumbo is definitely still a little bit oversized, but tends to lean more towards a regular fit when compared to the Amplas. Because I am a bigger guy, I like having the extra room in my chest, and while the jumbo is still technically an oversized like fit sweater and Vism's take on like what a streetwear sweatshirt would look like, for my body type it's more of a regular fit honestly, but for the most part it'll be oversized for most individuals. I still do have a little bit room in the chest, the sleeve length is pretty standard, and even though this is the short body version, I think it hits like right in the middle of my zipper, so it's, you know, it's about an average length. The Amplus though I think sits a little bit higher for me. It definitely sits closer to my waistline, which depending on like the fit that I'm going for, I think it's more flattering. I just also enjoy the overall room a bit more in the Amplus. And while there isn't really much differences to like, you know, people that aren't in the know, I think that these little details that affect fit are something that a lot of people should take into consideration when wanting to purchase either or. For the last few seasons though, Vism hasn't really been releasing the Amplus. I think that's because they're kind of straying away from like the really oversized fits. As you guys might have been able to tell, for example, the 101XX is now the 101X. So they're shrinking sizes across the board. And as I've already mentioned on some of my other videos, even the Pioneer shirt, for example, has gotten a little bit smaller in the chest and in the body. And while it is still an oversized like shirt, I don't think it has the same like, you know, overall fit because of the adjustments in certain areas. And while for some people that might be the better route because oversized, you know, while I don't want to call it a trend, it has been trendy, right? But I think that a lot more often than not, people are leaning towards comfort in their clothing. And so just having room overall, while the oversized thing could be considered a trend, I think people have just gotten really used to being comfortable and they prefer that. And so I think for a while, at least, oversized like fits are still going to stick around. I mean, minus like the people wearing baby tees and things like that. But, you know, that's a whole different conversation. But for me, again, I think that I finally pulled the trigger because I really enjoyed this blue colorway. And thankfully, I lucked out on the MSRP price change. While I still do think that even the amount that I got it for is a bit much for just a 100% cotton sweatshirt, I think these are the type of items where it's like if you're really into the brand and you've been enjoying a lot of their products, it's an easy way to incorporate some of their apparel items without having to worry about, you know, staining it in water with like mud dyes or, you know, dry cleaning it. Like this is a sweatshirt that you can just throw in the washer and dryer and not have to worry about. And this type of a product still provides you with the type of details that you'd expect from a brand like Vism, right? Like you still have like the crash processing throughout the body of the sweatshirt that shows a lot of different color variations. While this isn't a naturally dyed product, it is garment dyed. So it does have that like broken in effect and like that soft texture that's really enjoyable to both wear and look at. You also have crash detailing along the sleeves and across the body of the sweatshirt, which I think for some is kind of going to be either the make or break point. Some people would prefer to just buy a vintage sweatshirt. This type of a product definitely also plays into their future vintage aesthetic because, you know, sweatshirts for the most part are going to be timeless, right? And this type of a fit, this type of a look, most people are going to enjoy for years to come. As mentioned, there's several different designations amongst the Vism sweatshirt line. You have like the Jumbo PO, which basically means like a pullover sweatshirt. when you have like the little CSW, usually it's referring to like the cashmere or like a fabric variant. You also have like the ultimate versions with like the Sea Island cotton, that's some of the softest and rarest in the world. This is just a standard 100% cotton jumbo short body. I find it interesting though that they made this an FIL exclusive, especially since they've been releasing so many different variations of some kind of crash sweatshirt across the last few seasons that have been readily available at multiple retailers. And I think it's very interesting how Visvim releases like these like blues, these blacks, and these like green like crash sweatshirts throughout each season. And I think it's kind of nice to see some of the different variations in the textures and overall colors that you end up with throughout the seasons. I personally found this blue to be one of the more enjoyable colors that's been released. Like if you guys noticed, they also released like the Grenier jacket as well as the Bickle jacket in this material. And I think that it's a very charming sweatshirt to have that no one's really gonna bat a second eye at. So I think it's one of those like cool understated pieces that most people will be able to enjoy in their daily wear. Thank you all again for tuning into this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about the jumbo versus the Amplus cut. As already stated, I personally prefer the Amplus, but the jumbo silhouette definitely has a place in just about anyone's wardrobe. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, thank you all again for tuning in. Peace. The chest on the jumbo short body is a little bit shorter. There's someone walking over here. Now I feel awkward.